Hi there, everyone. I'm Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Just watched Naoya Inoue become a unified champion in his debut fight at super bantamweight, stopping Stephen Fulton, the defending champion for the WBC and the WBO, in the eighth round. He now not only becomes a unified champion at 122 pounds, but Inoue is also now a four-weight world champion. I wonder if he ever regrets skipping flyweight on his way up through the divisions, because then he'd be a five-weight world champion potentially now. Well, I'm sure he's not regretting much right this moment. I'm just waiting to be joined by former two-time champion, bantamweight champion, and recent Inoue opponent, Paul Butler. We were just waiting for him to log in. Hold on 1 second. Hi there, everyone. Danny Flexen here for Seconds Out. Just waiting to be joined by former two-time bantamweight champion Paul Butler, someone who knows just what it's like to be in there with Naoya Inoue, who has just become not only a unified champion at his latest weight, his debut at super bantamweight, stopping a brave but outgunned Stephen Fulton in round 8 of their showdown in Japan, literally, 5 minutes ago. But he is also a four-weight world champion. Um, and here, I believe we're just about to be joined by Paul Butler, who I'm sure cannot fail but be impressed by the victory for Naoya Inoue. Um, as I say, yeah, four-weight world champion now. I wonder if he ever regrets skipping flyweight on his way through the divisions, because he could potentially be a five-weight world champion by this point. But yeah, absolutely impressive. Fulton, it looked like he was just beginning to come into things, kind of rounds 5, 6, and 7. And then, yeah, got absolutely walloped in round 8. And I'm now delighted to be joined by Paul Butler. Paul, how you doing, mate?
I'm good, mate. Thanks for having me.
Anytime, mate, anytime. You lasted longer with Inoue than Fulton, did you? I don't know if that gives you any sort of consolation.
Yeah, do you know what? It's tough to get the rounds in with him. He's obviously like as soon as he walked out, I thought the size might help Fulton and the size and the difference in weights. But as soon as he walked out, I always said the best thing he done with me is just marking his presence straight away in the ring. His presence, the way he can dominate and move you around the ring where he wants. And I thought he'd done that pretty much straight away. All right, Fulton started to come into the fight, but I think Inoue allows people to do that to gain openings, because Fulton didn't open up for 4 or 5 rounds, and then when he did, that's where the gap started coming, and Inoue started landing the right hands. He couldn't land the right hand to start with. His jab, I thought, was magnificent. He mixed it up from head to body, and it was every time it landed, it looked devastating. The jab, even the jab. I thought he was very good there. I thought he looked spiteful. I thought the weight might play an issue, but no, it was never in doubt, was it?
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about what you'd said before about getting through those first 3 or 4 rounds against Inoue, covering
On
up.
an interview. On an interview.
Paul's having some parking issues, so I'll just fill some time. But yeah, You were saying about getting through those first 3 or 4 rounds before kind of letting your hands go a bit more. And it seemed that was
Yeah.
very much what Fulton was doing. The commentators were kind of on his case from the start about not throwing enough. But I felt like he was just trying to kind of tuck up, have a look, and then bring it on a little bit later. But as you said, it did seem like Inoue kind of allowed him to do that and led him on to those big counter shots. And that's kind of what started the end of the fight in the eighth.
I think that's the way most of his fights are going to go now. I think he's got to try and bring people out of his shell because they do fear the power straight away. And I personally didn't think the power was as much as what people were making out. Like the way, like he's just done it to him there. He's just knocked him out again to the head. But when he hit me clean to the chin, I didn't listen. It was bad, and I knew if 2 or 3 landed like it just has on Fulton, I think he's taking it out, which is why I stay switched on. And I couldn't allow any more than one. But I think he's got to try and start bringing. He's got to try to get people to come out the shell against him. And I think that's why he lets them edge him back a bit, let him edge. Like Fulton after 3 rounds started to push him back a little bit and started to try and let his own right hands go. And I think potentially in the end it was his downfall.
You can really see that kind of apprehension of his opponents as well, particularly in this fight, in that
Yeah.
Fulton was throwing feints but then not following up. He was throwing kind of half jabs but not fully committing to the shot.
Committing.
And it was all because, and then when he would wait too long, Inoue would just whack him with a jab either to head or body and really force him to reset again. He tried a bit of everything, Fulton, but never really committed, it seemed, to any one style.
Yeah, that's what I touched on to start with. It's the presence of him, honestly. Dan, you get in there with him, and as soon as you go to that centre of the ring, it's just the aura and the presence and the fact that you know how many knockouts he's got on his record. And listen, the jab's good enough as it is, and then the right hand comes with it. And listen, he's got the whole package. I've always said, even before I boxed him, I was a fan of, before we were even matched up. I've always said he is the complete package. He does everything right. His defense is good. His foot movement's good. He's still kept the old amateur style where he's got good feet, fast hands, mixes it up head to body, and he's got the power to go with it. I can't see any part of his game where he's average. He's good at everything.
And we'll talk about kind of particular potential future opponents in a minute. But what sort of style do you think a fighter is going to need to have? Obviously at the elite level, whoever it is, but what sort of style could give Inoue the most problems, do you think?
I think the only way Inoue will get beat is the way Loma got beat. Size will play a big part in it. And I've always said that I think only size will beat him eventually. I think he'll wipe out the super bantams, and I think potentially feather could be a bit too much for him. It all depends who he picks at feather. Do you know what I mean? He can be very clever. It all depends who's round at the time. But I do think feather the elite featherweights will keep him at bay. Do you know what I mean? And potentially they may be a bit too big for him. I do think he could win a world title at featherweight, but I think eventually when it's like, you know, your pound for pound against a pound for pounder, I do think that's what'll make him come unstuck potentially.
I mean, presumably he'll stay at super bantam at least long enough to try and become undisputed in a second weight class. I think Marlon Tapales, the Filipino who's got the other 2 belts, was ringside in Japan. Didn't look overly impressed. Took him a while to notice he was on camera. If it was him, I think in the crowd. But I'm sure he would have been impressed by the end. Do you see anything in his game that could maybe trouble Inoue? I think he'd be a big underdog.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to be a massive underdog with Inoue. I think, it's tough against him because, like I've just touched on, he does everything well. I thought size would play a big difference today. I thought he might be able to push him back when he wants, and he won't be able to manhandle him as much as he done the likes with me, Maloney, Donaire the second time round. I think, but it's the sheer that. I don't know what it is with him, but as soon as he takes that, it's the aura of him. As soon as he steps in front of you, you're sort of like, whoa, yeah, now this is real type thing. And I think you could see that on Fulton's face straight away. And I do think eventually he'll have to go up a weight. Mind you, he's only just had his first at super bantam, and I'm already talking about him going up to feather. But I do think he'll be a massive underdog against Inoue, and I think Inoue will come through, and I think he'll dominate at super bantam as well.
I mean, we saw Fulton manage to land flush a number of times, particularly with the right hand, long right hand. But Inoue never seemed more than kind of surprised by it. He never seemed bothered by it. A bigger puncher, perhaps. I know Fulton's naturally the bigger guy, looked bigger in there, but isn't known as a
Yeah,
Canelo
he
puncher.
wasn't. Yeah, he's not known as a puncher. I think they put up all the world champions with the
Oh, yeah.
least amount of knockout
Bit
ratios
harsh in that, isn't
beforehand,
it?
and he was on that list. Yeah, and he was on that list. Maybe Inoue's picked that fight knowing that potentially he wouldn't get hurt by him, and he could see what he was like at the weight. I think that's probably what he's done. He's probably gone the smarter way, and then now we'll go to. I don't know whether he'll make a defence or he'll go straight into to be undisputed.
Yeah, I mean, at Super Bantam, you've got people like Luis Nery, John Riel Casimero, both
Yeah,
big punchers moved up from lighter weights. But there's been talk about
yeah.
them both fighting Inoue in the past, and it's never come to fruition. Do you think we kind of have
Yeah,
to give up on those ones now?
possibly. I think the Casemiro one, obviously, I've had this history of him myself. He's probably given Inoue loads of stick as well, so I can't see Inoue really entertaining that because he's just not a nice person, and he probably wouldn't make weight, to be fair. With the Neri one, I know he failed a drug test, and I think he's been beat at Super Bantam, hasn't he? So did he get beat for the WBC title?
WBC, yeah.
Yeah, I think he got stopped with a body shot. I think if any of them could be made, I think that one potentially, as Inoue seen him hurt and he's seen him down, so he'll probably take something from that and think we can go with that one.
Do we think he could go up to feather? I know you talked about it just now and said you're not sure if he could take the power and stuff up with him, but the featherweight division's pretty strong at the moment, stronger arguably than super bantam. But do you think he could
Yeah,
find the right champion, the right opponent that he could have success against to become a 5-weight world champion?
yeah, I do. I think by the time he gets there, he's got to then look who the world champions are, because as everyone sees, it can all change within one fight in the featherweights. There's some really good opponents out there, and even your non-champions like Josh Warrington's, he's a big lad. Do you know what I mean? He's big. He's won 2 world titles before. You've got the likes of Lee Wood. I think Lee sparred with Inoue before, and he said he's. I'm sure Inoue said he's the hardest he's ever been hit by. So he knows in the back of his mind that the big lads and the big punchers up at that weight, and especially with the smaller gloves on, that they're going to be more of a threat to him. I don't think many at super bantam will be a threat to him. So I think his biggest challenge will come at featherweight.
Do you think there's fighters out there who really want the Inoue fight in the same way that fighters at the higher weights want a Canelo fight because he's up in the pound for pound rankings, it's a good payday and so on? Or do you think Inoue
Yeah, I
is
think
just more risk, more risk of taking a real beating rather than, just being outpointed or being stopped late?
a bit of both, really, because even when I seen him at the press conference and the weigh-in, and we were going head to head and that, you're thinking, how is this even possible? Him knocking out people like he's just done there. Like, you look at him and you think, no chance. You know what I mean? I'm sure people done the same with Golovkin years ago. How is
Yeah.
this? Like, they look like boys, don't they? Like, how's he doing what he's doing? But yeah, he's a very, very dangerous man, and I think partly both. I think people do see him as the way I seen him, where you think, come on, how's he doing that? But then there is the other side of, like, he is the big money fight. He's the big draw. It's a massive experience over there as well, and it. I got to boxing for the undisputed title, so it was a no-brainer for me. Not many people get to box for world titles, let alone all the marbles. So it was a no-brainer for me, and going over to Japan was a massive experience for me.
Is that any sort of advantage for him? I mean, it doesn't seem like he needs any extra advantages, but having most of his fights in Japan is, with the time difference, the different culture, and everything else, being the away
Yeah.
fighter generally. Do you think that's a big advantage for him, or is it just he's just a great fighter?
Yeah, both again. I think he is a great fighter, and I think if that was in America, he'd have done exactly the same in America. But just the little things, like for me, I couldn't really eat much over there. I just ate chicken and rice because they told me to stay away from the fish and the sushi and stuff like that, even though it's meant to be good over there. They told me to stay away from it. They said it's no good for you. It was hard to get used to the time difference. I was waking up at 3, 4 in the morning, couldn't get back asleep. I obviously only had like 6 or 7 days to acclimatise over there as well because we missed our first flight. Our flight got delayed in Manchester, got over there a couple of days late. So it was tough for me. Yeah, just the little things like I thought before the fight, the commission and that were very picky and strict with us. They made us cut off our little toggles on our on the ties for your laces. They wouldn't let me, so I put a little bit of Vaseline on my wrap so I could get them into my gloves because they were that tight. They went mad at that. Afterwards, they made a big issue about me not going to the toilet. I couldn't go to the toilet. I'd just done 11 rounds, so I needed to do my drug test, but I was drinking water, and they just made things difficult for us. So I do think in their own little way over there, they do try and make things quite difficult for you. But that was only a day or two before the fight and slightly after the fight. I think previous to that, as soon as I landed, they couldn't do enough for you.
And we saw in the build-up to the fight, a lot was made about Inoue and the way his hands were wrapped. Obviously, you've had a representative watching his hands being wrapped at close quarters and just generally seen him as a fan before you fought him as well. Have you ever had any suspicions in that regard? It just seems like a bit of a storm in a teacup.
No, mate, they're stacked. Scott Quigg went in to watch his hands get wrapped and he said, well, it's allowed over there. We questioned it when we went. So we goes over and we're like, you're not stacking your hands, and their law over there, you're allowed to. You put as much tape on as you want. Bandage, back to tape, back to bandage, back to tape. And that's what he done. Scott went and watched him and he said, they're the best hands I've ever seen be wrapped in my life. He said, they were unbelievable. He said, the way they done them, he said, they were quality. And I was talking about this in the gym on Monday with Scott. Again, I said, have you seen all this on the internet about the hands being wrapped? He said, yeah. He said, I have. He said, to be fair, he said that I watched him do it. He said they are stacked because he puts loads of tape on his skin. Then he goes bandage, back to tape, back to bandage, and then finishes off with tape again. He said, but they were very good. Now, we tried it in training a few days before because we thought, all right, if they're stacking, we'll see what it's like. I hated it. Didn't like it. I just thought that much tape around my hands, it felt like my hands had stopped the blood flow. They felt that tight. I didn't like them. I said, nah, I'll stick to what I know. But apparently, I had a text before saying he hasn't stacked hands. He's just gone to normal. I don't know how true that is.
Yeah, I think because of all the controversy, it seemed like it was normal when they showed the footage from the dressing room.
Yeah.
But how much of a difference do we think it actually makes? Because obviously, looking at today, he seems as big a puncher as ever, even up at super-bantam.
Yeah, that's it. It doesn't make a difference. We'll never know. But with a big puncher like himself, I think he'll always carry power. And I think, all right, it might give him the slight advantage as the rounds go on. They're meant to get hard, then it's meant to go like a cast. But like we've seen tonight, he obviously punches hard enough anyway to take anyone out.
In the build-up to the main event, ESPN's Mark Kriegel said that if Inoue wins this fight, which he obviously did, the only real discussion then is pound for pound number one. Is he a bit unlucky in that sense then that just a few days' time we're going to see Errol Spence and Terence Crawford lock horns? Because most people will say the winner of that is then the pound for pound number one. Paul's just frozen there, dazzled obviously by my question. So we'll give him some time to sort that out. But yeah, as I was saying, it's in where are we now? Tuesday. So it's in 4 days' time. We've got Errol Spence and Terence Crawford going at it. And most people will consider that pound for pound number one as they're both unbeaten, both close to their primes. So it's going to be a tricky one for Inoue to get that number one thing. And then you look around at the potential opponents at super bantamweight and featherweight, and you've got to wonder then who is his dance partner that's going to elevate him above whoever wins against Spence and Crawford. I guess, the only thing he could hope for is that the winner of that fight retires. And then he's elevated almost by default to pound for pound number one. And it's a shame because he's clearly an incredible fighter. But yeah, I mean, it's difficult because he's beaten everyone who's been put in front of him. But I just guess in the lighter weights, maybe the depth isn't there, or at least he hasn't got that ideal dance partner. He hasn't got that unbeaten guy who's already in that pound for pound top 10 to, be his adversary to really elevate him. Sugar Ray Leonard had Thomas Hearns and also, hey, he's back.
Go on. I don't know what happened there. It just kicked me out.
Nah, it's all good. I've just been desperately filling time, but I was just saying it seems a bit unfair on Inoue that to become pound for pound number one, he hasn't really got that ideal counterpart in the way that Spence and Crawford have got each other.
Yeah.
Unless the winner of that fight retires, he might be struggling to get to that number one spot.
Yeah, I think when he boxed Donaire last time, I'm sure Usyk boxed not long after that as well, and Usyk took the top spot back off him again. So he's got tough competition. I think every time they might put him up there now as number one, and Saturday he'll come and Crawford or Spence will take the spot back. It's a tough one, and I think that's why we have a good discussion about who is pound for pound number one. And I think, he's definitely top three. You only need to look at his resume and how many knockouts he's got at the top level as well. And he's a 4-weight division world champion now, so you can't knock what he's doing. And to still be knocking people out at super bantamweight, what he was doing down at flyweight as well, is phenomenal. Like,
I guess for him, the ideal thing would be for Crawford and Spence to fight out a draw, and then Daniel Dubois go and chin Usyk in Poland.
Yeah,
it's unlikely as both of those sound.
Canelo to get a draw against Charlo as well.
Oh yeah, and that,
yeah. There's a few of them that you could have in and around the number ones, but for me, he's definitely top three. And I think with the names we've just mentioned, I think that's some fighter, isn't it? Alone.
Do you take some pride and some consolation from the fact that he is going on to prove each time? I mean, this is the first since you, but I'm sure he'll carry on doing well. That he is genuinely an elite pound for pound fighter.
Mate, he'll go down as one of the best ever. He's Japan's best as it is. He'll go down as one of the. In years and years and years to come, people will say, "Wow, remember that Inoue? Remember the knockout? Like, there's so many you can just reel off." And I think the highlight reels in years to come will be special to watch.
And let's talk about you. You haven't fought since the Inoue fight. He's obviously only returned now in July, so he's been out for 7 months himself.
I boxed about 3 weeks ago, Dan. I boxed in Uzbekistan.
I thought I looked on BoxRec. I couldn't see it.
I don't know why, but it's not on there for some reason. It definitely wasn't an exhibition. Like, it was a proper fight, but I don't know why it's not on there.
Oh, well, tell us about that experience then, because that's obviously something that's passed me by.
Well, I was dying to box for ages. I was in the gym from probably mid-January, and I was constantly on the phone. Can I box? They didn't have nothing, so Joe was like, "You can box on one of my shows." So I was like, "Sound, I'm not bothered, mate. I think I was going to box on the same one as Charlie boxed on." And they got on the phone and said Paul can box a week later in Uzbekistan on a Disrupt show. I said, "Go on, then I'll take it." Because if I didn't take it, I could potentially be sat on the sideline again for a while. Well, you didn't take that fight, so just wait for now, yeah? So I said, "Yeah, go on, I'll take it." Flew over on the Tuesday, boxed on the Friday. I was at Chester Races on the Saturday. Got it over and done with in a round. And
in your purse.
And then, just literally jumped in the shower, got on the plane, and I was home.
So what is the future then for you? Obviously, Inoue gave up the belts at Bantam. We've now got new champions. No one that I could see that you'd be particularly apprehensive about challenging, and the lure to be a 3-time bantamweight champion must be strong.
100%, mate. I think that's the only thing I can look towards now. Is that's why I needed that fight in Uzbekistan. I just needed a win back on the card, and we can. By the end of the year, I've said I want to box for a world title, or I'm in line to box for one. I'd like to box for an eliminator of some sort, or I've got one scheduled that you've got a world title. I'd like the Inoue brother fight. I'd like to fight him. I'd go back to Japan. Um, I'd box him for his WBA title. I'd like to go to Australia, box Maloney as well. But I think he's going to chase the Donaire fight as well if Donaire wins. I've seen there's talk of that. So potentially if them two that's a good fight. That, to be fair, I like that fight, Donaire versus Maloney. It's a good fans fight, that. But I wouldn't mind the Inoue fight. We know how they look after us over there. We know how they deal with things. We'd deal with things a little bit better the way they tried to treat us last time, so we'd know what was coming. So I wouldn't mind that fight, to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, Takamu Inoue, obviously world champion, very, very talented, destined, unfortunately, to be a little bit in his brother's shadow. There's no way around that. And he's not the puncher, to be fair, that his brother is, maybe stronger in other areas. But yeah, really good fight. Donaire, you just mentioned there as well. If he wins the WBC, he's going for on Saturday on the Crawford bill. That's another great one. I think you're in the top 10 for WBO, WBC still as well. So yeah, kind of world your oyster a little bit, and yeah.
I think the champions can definitely look at me as well and think he done 11 with Inoue. Hardly anyone's done that. It's a good name for the record, and it's a creditable fight. Do you know what I mean? It's a good fight. So hopefully one of them look at it like that and was to pick me for a voluntary.
Good stuff. Now, before I let you go, just some final thoughts on Naoya Inoue and his performance against Fulton, if you had to sum it up.
Yeah, I thought he was dominant. I thought from the very first round, he done what I thought he'd do. He'd go out there, put his presence on the fight straight away, straight on the front foot. Jab was phenomenal. If you're talking about jabs in the sport of boxing, I think he's definitely got one of the best out there for such a small guy. Going up a weight again, the way he gets his jab out and he's dominant with the jab.
Paul seems to have frozen there. Connection problems, my laptop is telling me. But yeah, I agree with everything Paul said. We'll see if we can restore him presently. But yeah, very dominant performance from Naoya Inoue. It seemed like Fulton was just starting to make inroads, rounds kind of 5, 6, 7. And then Inoue shut the door firmly on any thoughts of a comeback in round 8. Big right hand, completely rocked, buzzed Fulton, who stumbled back. And as he was kind of half falling, Inoue landed a left hook as well. It looked like the referee was trying to dive in before that left hook landed, but didn't get there in time. Very heavy knockdown. And then Inoue just unloaded and caused the stoppage on the resumption. Very, very impressive performance up at the new weight. Clearly against a bigger man physically as well in Fulton. That was clear in the ring, but not a bigger puncher. Inoue's footwork, his hand speed was all still there, but he appears to have carried the power up as well. And if you've been listening or watching for the last 20, 25 minutes, Paul Butler's been effusive in his praise for Inoue also, who he believes will go down as an all-time great. Now a 4-weight world champion, current unified champion at 122 pounds. And Paul's also informed us, unbeknownst to myself and BoxRec, that he was out in Uzbekistan 3 weeks ago and got a welcome win out there, and he will now be looking to become a 3-time bantamweight world champion. So really appreciate you all for tuning in to this live stream. Immediate reaction to Naoya Inoue becoming a 4-weight world champion with an 8th round stoppage of Stephen Fulton. Very, very impressive performance. Really enjoyed the fight. And yeah, thank you all, and let's catch up soon. Cheers.